is the story of an orphan boy who was kidnapped and forced into illegal human experiments by twisted scientists. He was one of the rarest children alive. His body could withstand the fusion of monster genes. Labeled as number 17, he was turned into a weapon, granted terrifying powers, and used to fight monsters on humanity's behalf. But the experiments never stopped. Again and again, his body was fused with more monster genes, each time pushing him closer to becoming something inhuman. Though he rose to become the strongest awakener and humanity's greatest hero, the cost was brutal. Piece by piece, his body changed, sprouting monstrous parts, while his emotions and humanity withered away. Years passed, and eventually he transformed into a chimera, the ultimate human weapon. Yet the world that once praised him now recoiled in fear and disgust. Parents hid their children from his shadow, and whispers of monster replaced the cheers of hero. Even then, the mad scientists continued. They fused him with over 170 different monster genes, testing his limits until his body finally began to corrode under the weight of it all. Declared a failure, the higher-ups decided he was no longer worth saving. Number 17 was cast away, abandoned in a dungeon to die, alone. But fate had other plans. In death, he was reborn, not as a monster this time, but as a human again, restored to his peak form.
You are watching Slime Recap.
The world changed with a single event. One day, a gate appeared, and with it came ruin. From that rift emerged what would later be called the Demon Realm. Monsters, savage and merciless, spilled out and tore through everything in their path. Humanity, powerless to resist, stood on the edge of extinction. Then, in the midst of despair, some people awakened. They were called hunters, individuals, who discovered mana within their bodies and unlocked extraordinary abilities. With their arrival, the tide shifted. Humanity, once cornered, began to fight back. Years passed. Cities once reduced to rubble were rebuilt. Defense systems and combat units were established to stand against the endless stream of monsters pouring out of gates. On every battlefield, hunters fought desperate battles, wagering their lives in brutal clashes. But one problem remained unsolved. There simply weren't enough hunters. Natural awakenings were too rare to meet the world's growing need. That was when a new answer was created: artificial hunters. Known as chimeras, scientists experimented with death row inmates, mutated animals, monster cells harvested from the demon realm, and rare minerals drawn from within gates. By combining these elements through advanced technology, humanity produced synthetic warriors strong enough to face the threat. It was hailed as the perfect fusion of science and hunter power. Mortality rates plummeted, countless lives were saved, and humanity gained a real foothold in the war. The Chimera Project changed everything. Even elite S-class hunters embraced monstrous enhancements, fusing their strength with the very creatures they sought to destroy. Healing methods advanced, strategies evolved, and the war itself transformed. It was no longer humans against monsters. It became a struggle of hybrids' adaptation against extinction. Late at night, in the shadowed halls of an illegal chimera research facility, the quiet hum of machines filled the sterile air. In the high-security sector labeled B-18, two weary scientists carried out their final inspection. One of them sighed in relief. Just one more subject to check before they could call it a day. At the end of the row, they stopped. A foul stench hung in the chamber. Inside the final tank lay subject number 17. His arm was rotting, the flesh mottled and decayed. One scientist warned his colleague to stay back, but the other, forcing a nervous laugh, waved him off. Number 17's brain was non-functional. Without commands, he wouldn't move. Still, the figure was unsettling. Hulking, scarred from endless experiments, he looked more like a nightmare than a soldier. The second scientist leaned closer, studying the grotesquely damaged arm, likely the result of a failed enhancement. He asked why his colleague seemed so afraid. After all, the thing could barely see. Unconvinced but eager to finish, they moved on. Number 17, they agreed, was a failure destined for disposal. Later, in the director's office, they delivered their report without hesitation. The subject was beyond saving, his body too damaged. At best, he had a month left. The director listened without emotion, then issued his order. Number 17 would be deployed in the upcoming gate blockade. He would guard the rear during the retreat. No return command would be uploaded. He would be abandoned to die. Far away, in the jagged mountains of the demon realm, number 17 fought. His decayed arm hung useless, but his movements were precise and brutal. A massive beast leapt from above. In an instant, his claws ripped it to pieces. Another lunged forward and met the same fate. Blood stained the rocks. Number 17 raised his head, energy pulsing through his body. With a guttural roar, he unleashed a devastating blast. The attack consumed the battlefield, reducing every monster in its path to smoldering ash. At a distance, hunters watched in stunned silence. A girl stood frozen, breath caught in her throat. Beside her, a boy whispered in awe. A single strike had annihilated an entire wave of monsters. Despite his broken body, number 17 was terrifying, a true S-class chimera hunter. Even so, the gate showed no signs of closing. 3 days had passed already, yet one hunter steadied the team. As long as number 17 was with them, they could endure. All that remained was to cut down whatever stragglers slipped through. The hunters tightened their formation, striking with precision as number 17 stood at the center of the carnage, an unstoppable weapon humanity had thrown away. A sudden transmission broke the tension. News spread quickly. The signal had been confirmed. The red gate was finally beginning to vanish, a sign that the operation was drawing to a close. The command for immediate retreat was issued. Every hunter was ordered to fall back and exit through the portal without delay. The squad moved swiftly, racing toward the fading light of the gate, yet on the battlefield number 17 remained, still locked in a savage clash against a fresh wave of beasts. His body was faltering, his movements slower and heavy with exhaustion, but he fought without pause. Among the retreating hunters, one of them turned back, troubled by the sight of the chimera still fighting. She wondered aloud if abandoning him was right. Another, running beside her, reminded her that their orders were absolute. Number 17 was never meant to return. And so, while the hunters crossed into safety, the chimera remained behind in the collapsing realm, continuing the battle not for triumph or survival, but simply because his system compelled him to fight until the end. Doubt lingered in the minds of some. Without number 17, the squad would never have completed the mission. He had carried the weight of the battle, yet official orders dismissed such concerns. His lifespan was already at its end, and there was no reason to recover a weapon that had served its purpose. He was no longer considered human, only a creation built to obey commands. On the battlefield, explosions shook the ground as number 17 tore through the swarming horde. Surrounded on all sides, he fought with ruthless precision until a monster's strike severed his arm. His system updated automatically, no casualties among the hunters. Total enemies subdued, 1,823. That tally marked the end of Chimera Hunter number 17. As life slipped away, fragments of memory surged within his fading mind. Images from a distant past returned, pieces of a life he had long forgotten. He recalled that once, long ago, he had been human. At the age of 9, he was taken? Memories poured through like a broken dam. He saw the orphanage in District 13 where his childhood had begun, 79 years earlier. He remembered being adopted, then abandoned. His temper had been fierce, often answering cruelty with stones. When left to survive alone, he had wandered one snowy night, starving and weak, until he collapsed in the cold. That was when scientists had found him. That was the beginning of the experiments. His name was stripped away, he became a subject, a number, 17. Layers of containment spells ensured obedience. Scientists injected his body with S-class silkworm larva cells, and to their astonishment, he survived without side effects. A new ability awakened within him. Encouraged, they continued the process, implanting more monster cells, waiting each time for rejection that never came. Years passed. At 15, altered beyond recognition, he was sent into battle. He remembered protecting a mother from a beast and receiving gratitude he did not know how to accept. Another hunter had pitied his burden, yet he carried it silently. 5 years later, surrounded by corpses on a battlefield, his mind faltered. For the first time, he questioned why he was there. Handlers noticed his hesitation. The side effects had begun. His memories were unraveling. 15 years of procedures left him infused with more than 500 types of monster cells. His strength exceeded every known rank. To the scientists, he was their masterpiece. Decades passed. His body shifted further, until his humanity was buried beneath monstrous form. 34 years after his capture, he had become unrecognizable. Spectators came to gawk, some in awe, others in fear. Parents shielded their children from his sight. Now, in the present, number 17 lay broken on the battlefield. His thoughts dimmed, but one final certainty surfaced. All missions were complete. With 527 monster cells inside him, his journey as Chimera Hunter number 17 was over. Then, something extraordinary occurred. In the silence after the battle, his monstrous body began to change. Flesh writhed, scars dissolved, and twisted features melted away. In moments, the grotesque form was gone, replaced by a human figure. Despite the passage of nearly 8 decades, the body that remained was youthful, untouched by time. Naked and disoriented, he stared at his hands, overwhelmed by what he had become. The truth was unclear. Had he truly returned to being human? From that instant, the existence once known only as number 17 began again. A life once stolen had been given back. A new journey was about to unfold. Uan Do-woon looked at himself, silently reflecting on the changes within. The abilities of the monster cells still lingered inside him, a reminder that he could no longer consider himself entirely human. Time had clearly passed since the incident, and the absence of any retrieval attempt from the lab confirmed it. He had been abandoned. Even the experiment number, once engraved on his wrist, had vanished. To him, this disappearance was a sign perhaps he no longer had any ties to the lab. His body, altered and resilient, now reflected the traits of an immortal-type being. It could regenerate up to 3 times, so long as its core remained intact. But the lab had claimed that human and immortal cells couldn't fuse. That contradiction no longer mattered. What mattered was that his body had returned to peak condition. The side effects from the experiments had vanished, and with them, the lingering fog that once clouded his mind. The restrictive spells etched into him, those meant to prevent rebellion or escape, had disappeared too. It felt like the end of his life as number 17, a meaningless label given by the lab. For the first time, he wondered if he could now live as a human. His thoughts drifted to the past. A man had once spoken to him, bluntly observing his unstable nature. That man had encouraged him to try living a life that helped others, if not out of kindness, then out of purpose. Helping 1,000 people, he had said. It was then that the man gave him a name, Cheon Do-woon. That name echoed in Do-woon's mind. He remembered his origins, an orphan from the slums. The idea of helping others had always felt absurd to someone like him. But now, as he stood free and changed, the question lingered. What should come next? Revenge seemed like an option. Yet, revenge needed a target, and no one stood in front of him anymore. The fire he once felt for vengeance had dimmed over time, dulled by distance and the absence of those who wronged him, and even if he wished to return to the human world, there was no path available at the moment. But he knew that time was on his side. If he lived long enough, the day would come when he crossed paths with them again. Until then, he would wait, and think about the future when it arrived. Cheon Do-woon's gaze dropped to his own body once more, his eyes quietly scanning every detail. Though monstrous power flowed through his veins, on the surface, his body had taken on a strikingly human appearance. Muscles, skin, and even the anatomy below, all intact and familiar. It was almost surreal. A quiet determination rose within him. He had made up his mind. For now, even if it was only temporary, he would try living a little more like a human. As this thought settled, a new concern surfaced. Chloe couldn't even recall the last time he wore any. The idea felt distant, like a memory buried beneath the chaos of blood, cells, and experiments. With casual steps, he wandered along the rocky terrain, eventually finding himself at the edge of a calm, glassy lake. The water shimmered under the pale light of the demon realm's sky. There, he paused, staring at the still surface. What could he use to make clothes? Most of the surrounding materials seemed too rigid or unsuitable. Still, he figured it was worth exploring. His eyes scanned the area until they landed on something useful. A monster corpse sprawled near the lakeside. Judging by its intact body and the absence of serious wounds, it hadn't died from blunt trauma or injury. Most likely it was a case of poisoning, perhaps due to a territorial clash. The timing couldn't have been better. He needed leather, and this monster's hide looked perfect. But to work with it, he needed precision. A blade would make the process easier. He recalled the procedures he'd learned during his time in the lab. First, cut the belly straight down, then create clean incisions along the limbs. Without hesitation, he activated one of his inhuman traits. With practiced efficiency, he began dissecting the creature, slicing through flesh and muscle. As he worked, a faint, glowing poison aura seeped out from the open wounds, curling into the air like mist. Despite the stench and the toxic presence, he continued. Piece by piece, he removed the hide, careful not to damage it. When the task was done, he took the foul-smelling leather to the edge of the lake and began washing it thoroughly. As water rushed over the material, he noticed something curious. It had looked soft at first glance, but in reality it was surprisingly stiff, almost like a hardened shell. Though it wasn't metal, it offered a resistance that was unusual. Perhaps this was simply the nature of monster hide. He tried to recall the steps of tanning. Was this how it was done in the demon realm? Probably close enough. He began beating the leather, striking it over and over in an attempt to soften the texture. The repetitive force eventually loosened the stiffness. Slowly, the material began to yield. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. Once satisfied, he roughly cut it to size and crafted it into a crude outfit. The shape was basic, but functional. It fit his body well. As he adjusted it, he noticed that the leather still retained traces of poison. It hadn't fully drained, which irritated him, but not enough to abandon the effort. Deciding it wasn't a big deal, he chose to wear it anyway. Just as he finished dressing, a movement behind him caught his attention. The monster, the one he had skinned, was twitching. Its body trembled weakly, gasping for breath. Confused, Dawoon turned, staring at the creature. It had shown clear signs of rigor mortis earlier. It was supposed to be dead. But it was alive. Even after everything, it remained conscious. The monster's eyes met his. There was understanding in them, awareness. This one, like him, must be an immortal. In the past, he would have ended it right away. After all, he had once been a hunter. But now it didn't matter. The creature was no threat, just a shell clinging to life. For the first time, he felt no urge to kill. Instead, he offered a faint smile. They had both been given another chance. This was their second life. If fate allowed it, perhaps they would cross paths again. Without looking back, he left the weakened creature behind. Soon, he reached a dark, hollow cave. It was the first potential shelter he had found. But as he stepped inside, he was met by a lurking monster. Without hesitation, he killed it. However, the cave was damp and suffocating. Shadows clung to the walls, and he knew instantly this wasn't the place. He kept moving. The next stop was an icy wasteland, covered in frost and snow. Ice monsters roamed freely. He slaughtered them with ease, but as he looked around, he realized the truth. There was no food. Survival here would be impossible. The third place he explored reeked of rot and decay. The smell alone was unbearable. He left quickly. 2 more locations followed. One was too damp, its walls constantly weeping with moisture. The other unbearably hot, its air thick and suffocating. Neither would do. Finally, after tireless searching, he stumbled upon a spot near a cascading waterfall. The sound of rushing water filled the air, and the scenery took his breath away. He never imagined he would call any part of the demon realm beautiful, but this place came close. He decided to explore it further. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that the water was clean and teeming with fish. His stomach rumbled. The fish looked fresh, though oddly threatening. They seemed capable of swarming and devouring anything in their path. Still, the idea of catching and grilling one over a fire made him nostalgic. It would almost feel like camping. Wildflowers grew along the edges, adding bursts of color to the landscape. The air was fresh, untainted. Everything about this place felt peaceful. Cheon Dawoon stood silently, letting the moment sink in. This was it. This was home. From now on, this tranquil spot would be his sanctuary. Far away, in a different region of the demon realm, something stirred. Without warning, a portal burst open, warping the very air around it. From within the swirling light, a small robot emerged. Its sensors flickered to life as it scanned the terrain, confirming its arrival. This was the demon realm. Cheon Dawoon stood in the vast wilderness, thinking to himself, maybe it was time to try building something. A home. His own house. He began by clearing the area. With a flick of his power, he cut down a massive tree, declaring the space sufficient for construction. He separated the trees that were still in good condition and counted what he had. The number of trees seemed enough for the structure he had in mind, but the ground beneath his feet felt uneven. Without hesitation, he moved to another area and cleared every tree standing there. He marked each corner, preparing to plant sturdy pillars. He mused over what this feeling was. Free will? Maybe. Whatever it was, it felt good. Perhaps it was simply the thrill of building his first home with his own hands. He started laying planks on the floor, then moved on to building the walls. Without nails, he improvised, using mucus from snail sex monsters as an adhesive. Once it hardened, it would be as solid as stone, waterproof even. As he worked on the finishing touches, he smiled. Most monsters wouldn't dare approach the house thanks to the mucus coating. He reinforced the place with silkworm larva cocoon silk, adding insulation and a cozy feel. He looked around, satisfied, but something felt missing. It didn't quite feel like a normal house. He tried to recall what homes looked like before the gates opened. From the educational videos he watched back in the lab, he remembered how human homes had yards, often growing something in them. But raising dogs in the demon realm wasn't an option. He considered planting something, maybe a vegetable garden. That's when an idea struck him. Mandragora. The snowy mountain nearby might host them. Without delay, he set out for the snow-covered peaks. Heavy snowfall blanketed the trail as he climbed, thick demonic energy in the air. This was indeed where mandrakes thrived. The harsh weather reminded him of the day he was kidnapped and taken to the lab. He remembered how cold he was, how a part of him had almost felt lucky to be taken. Becoming a chimera had its upsides. He no longer feared starvation or freezing to death. Following the thickening aura, he reached a clearing where the snow began to ease. And there, he found them. Mandrakes. The trip hadn't been in vain. Mandrakes were known to be sensitive to stress. Even slight changes in the environment could kill them. He needed younger, more adaptable ones if he intended to transplant them. He chose 3 roots for now. He winced, remembering their infamous scream. He should have plugged his ears. But as he pulled one out, he noticed something strange. The mandrake was asleep, mumbling softly. The others, too, were sleeping soundly and mumbling in their slumber. It caught him off guard. The famous mandragora scream only happened when humans forcefully cultivated them in the low-mana human world. In the demon realm, however, it didn't happen. There was no resistance either. At this point, the plants should have been desperately trying to escape, but they weren't. A realization hit him. Maybe they recognized him as kin. After all, mandragora cells were part of his body now. That made things easier. Less stress meant better chances for transplantation. And once they grew well, he could harvest a few root tendrils and brew tea. Their fruit could even serve as a snack. But suddenly, he sensed something. Hunters were nearby. Though he couldn't understand why anyone would venture into this dangerous snowy mountain, he figured he could grab some gate stones quickly before trouble found him. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the mountain, a group of hunters fought desperately against snow rabbits. Already injured, they were on the verge of collapse. One of them cried out, frustrated that they had been used as bait. Another shouted for his teammates to stay alert as the monsters charged again. In pain and fear, one of the hunters began sobbing. They quickly set up a barrier, though it wouldn't last much longer. Regret filled the air. They wished they had stayed back, stuck to safer jobs. One of them lamented ever volunteering to find the chimera. With no options left, they shouted for help. Then, out of nowhere, an explosion echoed across the snowy landscape. The hunters looked up, stunned by the sudden blast. It was a person towering, calm and powerful. Cheon Do-woon had arrived. He looked at the snow rabbits and recognized them. It had been a while. Releasing his aura, he revealed the monstrous shadow that lived within him. The snow rabbits, sensing the overwhelming power, turned tail and fled in fear. The hunters were shocked. A B-class monster fleeing instantly just from seeing him? One of the hunters, Taehan, stepped forward and expressed his gratitude, introducing his companions. The one beside him was Oh Sung-ju, and he himself was Kim Tae-hoon. Taehan Do-woon simply gave his name. The outfit Do-woon wore also seemed strange, making Taehan wonder if he was some reclusive hunter. Noticing Seongju's poor condition, Do-woon asked why someone clearly D-class was here, especially in such a dangerous location. Taehan hesitated, then confessed. It was all for money. A request had gone out to capture a chimera alive. The reward was substantial. Do-woon froze. A chimera? Realization hit him. Taehan, trying to explain, mentioned that one of the test subjects had escaped the lab. A machine-like creature had fled, jumping into a gate to avoid capture. Taehan weighed the situation carefully. If the escaped being was truly a machine-based creature, then there was no reason to believe they were hunting him. This ruled out any immediate threat to his identity. With that reassurance, his focus returned to what mattered. He questioned them firmly. Where were their supplies? The gatestone? Seongju, visibly in pain, gritted his teeth and clutched his injured arm as he revealed the bitter truth. Their so-called teammates had taken everything and abandoned them. It wasn't a betrayal born from panic. It had been premeditated. From the moment that B-class hunter had invited him along, the trap had already been set. Seongju blamed himself for not seeing it sooner. Cheon Do-woon processed the revelation quickly, so the gatestone was now in the hands of deserters. That changed his course. He needed to find them, fast. Taehoon, his voice shaking under the weight of exhaustion and fear, asked if Do-woon had any intention of returning. Their stamina was depleted. Their mana resistance was failing. Seongju added with dread in his tone. Mana contamination was progressing rapidly. Do-won understood the severity. Survival in the demon realm was a race against time. Hunters who overstayed their limits risked irreversible corruption. Without returning to the human world and purifying their mana, most would perish, either from collapse or mutation. But Cheong Do-woon wasn't like most. His altered body made him an exception, one that could linger here without consequence. Just then, faint voices drifted through the snowy wind. Pleas filled the air, tinged with desperation and panic. Someone begged to be brought back. Another shouted about a pregnant wife waiting for him at home. The guilt and fear in their voices made it clear these were the very traitors who had abandoned their own. Do-woon had found them. Without a word, he shifted into motion, dashing through the snow with powerful, bounding strides. He moved like a phantom, too fast to follow, his form slipping between the trees and snowdrifts. Behind him, the injured hunters called out his name, their cries growing desperate. They begged him to take them along. To save them too. Their voices cracked with emotion, fading into silence as he vanished into the distance. Far from them, in a more isolated sector of the demon realm, the escape machine creature stood still. Its sensors scanned its surroundings, processing every flicker of movement and surge of mana. The landscape was unstable. The area bristled with danger. Suddenly, from the shadows behind, a group of armed hunters launched their ambush. With practiced precision they moved to surround it. One shouted the signal. Now was their chance. All units were ordered to attack at once. Capture was the goal and hesitation could mean failure, but the creature's awareness was instantaneous. Alert protocols engaged and its systems surged to combat readiness. It turned around swiftly, locking eyes on its attackers. The danger was real, and so was its response. No longer passive, the creature braced itself. Sparks of energy coursed through its limbs. This would not be an easy fight. The ambush had failed to catch it off guard, and now it was fully prepared to retaliate. Chon De-woon reached the scene to find blood splattered across the ground like a grim reminder of the chaos that had unfolded moments ago. The bodies of the hunters were nowhere in sight, only their gear lay scattered, bags half open and supplies spilling out across the dirt. The eerie silence of the place made it clear he had arrived too late. Suspended silently in the air, a glowing gatestone pulsed faintly, untouched amid the carnage. The evidence painted a vivid picture. The hunters had escaped in a frenzy, too panicked to retrieve their belongings. Among the mess of footprints, Do-woon noticed something unusual. Smaller impressions, much lighter than an adult's. One set resembled a child's, the other, something like a paw. From this he deduced the truth. The mechanical chimera had engaged in battle, while shifting between forms. With its liquid metal composition it could morph freely, but the material was limited. Most likely it had taken on a compact shape, child-sized, or resembling a small beast. Yet even in such a restricted form, it had managed to overpower 5 trained Burink hunters on its own. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Taehan knelt beside a barely conscious Seungju, struggling to keep him tethered to life. Seungju's face was pale, veins darkened as demonic energy coursed through his body. His breath came in short gasps, and his voice trembled with resignation. He believed his time had come, but Taehan refused to accept it. With desperation in his voice, he reminded Seungju of the child his wife was about to deliver next month. That baby still needed a father. Seungju, overwhelmed and defeated, muttered a request for Taehan to apologize to his wife on his behalf. Hearing those words, Taehan's eyes burned with tears. He clasped his friend's hand tightly, begging him to hold on a little longer. Just then, a light split through the dense air. Cheon Do-woon stepped forward, emerging from the mist with a calm but otherworldly presence. Draped in soft, glowing light, he carried the hunter's missing luggage over his shoulder. As if a miracle had arrived, Taehan's emotions burst to the surface. He ran to Do-woon, fell to his knees, and pleaded for help with everything he had. In the demon realm, once something was lost, it was rarely recovered. But this time, they had come prepared. With trembling hands, Taehan pulled out 2 folded checks, each worth 10 million won. It was their combined savings, the sum total of everything they could offer. This wasn't a bribe, it was a desperate price for survival. They didn't ask for healing. They didn't beg for miracles. All they wanted was one gatestone, just one chance to get out alive. Ewan looked at the checks with mild surprise. Money held no value in this forsaken realm, but once he returned to the human world, it would be worth something. Not because he needed it, but because such an offer showed the depth of their desperation. Without another word, he accepted the deal. Holding the gatestone between his fingers, he activated it. A portal opened, swirling with light, an escape from certain death. Taehan bowed his head deeply, his voice cracking as he vowed to never forget this kindness. Out of casual curiosity, Do-woon asked what gatestones were going for in the human world these days. Taehan, still kneeling, replied breathlessly that the price had risen to about 1 million won. Do-woon chuckled to himself, half amused. He had just been overpaid 10 times over. Yet he didn't complain. Instead, he knelt beside Seungju and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Mana began to flow from Do-woon's palm, a glowing stream of pure energy. He was injecting it directly into Seungju's body. Taehan's eyes widened in horror. Mana injection was a forbidden technique, rarely used even by the most advanced hunters. If the injected mana clashed with the recipient's core, it could trigger a deadly collapse. Both the user and the recipient could die instantly. Even A-ranks hunters avoided this risk. But before Taehan could object or intervene, the result unfolded before his eyes. Seungju's breathing steadied. The veins darkened by demonic energy began to lighten, the corruption purged completely. His body relaxed, and life returned to his expression. Cheon Do-woon stood up silently, brushing the dust from his hands as if nothing had happened. He turned and calmly said he would be heading down now. His presence had felt like divine intervention, and now he was leaving just as quietly as he came. Xiangju, now conscious, managed to murmur words of gratitude. He could breathe again, speak again, live again, all because of this stranger. Taehan, still stunned by what he had witnessed, could only watch in silence. His thoughts raced, questions flooding his mind. Who was this man really? What kind of power did he wield? And why did someone so powerful walk alone in a place like this? In that moment, Taehan realized one thing with absolute certainty. Cheon Dawoon was no ordinary man. Back at his house, Dawoon checked for signs of intrusion. The place was untouched. He noted the unexpected income and considered the outing a success. His focus shifted to the mangas. Their leaves drooped from exhaustion. Likely it was the result of the long trip. He planted them outside, but they still looked displeased. He couldn't tell if it was the new environment or hunger from being transplanted without soil. To ease them, he pushed some mana into the ground. The reaction was immediate. The mangas perked up, visibly relieved. Then, he felt another presence. It could be the mechanical chimera the hunters had pursued. If it had business with him, he figured it would appear soon. For now, he stored the checks and began unpacking the luggage. Inside were practical items: a burner and pot set, 8 gate stones, clothes, and sleeping bags with blankets. The hunters had come prepared. Among the supplies, he found a packet of ramen. The sight stirred an old memory. He hadn't eaten ramen since his childhood in the orphanage. Hunger hit him. He decided to cook. He filled a pot with 500 ml of water and went to the stream. A fish jumped from the water, reminding him that ramen often tasted better with extra ingredients. He had no eggs but decided to use a monster egg instead. There were no green onions either, so he replaced them with local demon realm leaves. With everything ready, he turned on the burner and tossed in all of the ingredients at once, but soon, the smell changed. The ramen was burning. He wondered if this was normal. Nearby, the mechanical chimera smelled the food, remembering its lab observations, that humans were kind to dogs. It changed form. Limping like an injured dog, it approached the house. Duan noticed it immediately. It had been following him. He guessed the transformation was meant to lower his guard. The limp may be staged. Judging by its behavior, the chimera was young and inexperienced. He couldn't imagine how such a creature had escaped the lab and made its way here. The ramen was finally ready. It looked different, but he offered it to the chimera anyway. They ate together in silence. The taste triggered more memories. The flavor brought him back to being 7 in the orphanage, when ramen was a rare comfort. The nostalgia was overpowering. The mangas, on the other hand, couldn't handle the smell. They started vomiting nearby. Duan, unfazed, told the chimera it could leave if it was done eating. He had cleaning to do. As the dog walked off, he noticed something odd. Earlier, it limped on its left leg. Now it was the right. He gave a small laugh. After finishing his meal, Duwal made his way toward a nearby waterfall, choosing it as the ideal place to clean up. He began by rinsing the dishes with practiced ease, methodically scrubbing away the traces of his cooking. With that done, his attention turned to the set of old clothes he had scavenged from the abandoned bag earlier. Living wrapped in leather wasn't sustainable. It was heavy, inflexible, and uncomfortable. If he was going to adapt to human life, even just temporarily, practicality mattered. He dipped the worn garments into the rushing water and began beating them gently with a smooth wooden stick. He was careful not to damage the fragile fabric, striking with just enough force to dislodge grime. But midway through his work, the stick snapped cleanly in half, with a dull crack. The sound echoed through the quiet forest. Without irritation or frustration, he simply grabbed the next piece of clothing and got back to work, unfazed by the interruption. The mechanical being lingered nearby. Its form rippled subtly, shimmering as its shape shifted again. This time it turned into a glimmering rock, with oversized, cartoonish eyes, clearly trying to appear harmless, even endearing. It nestled near the flowers, almost blending in, except for its obvious mimicry. As Dowen continued washing, the creature watched him rinse, scrub, pause. When he stopped to admire a nearby patch of forsyth flowers, a rare species with golden petals that glowed faintly in the sunlight, the chimera responded by transforming again, disguising itself as a small flowering tree. But its illusion was short-lived. A bee-like insect monster, drawn by the bright flowers, landed on its makeshift petals. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Startled, the chimera jumped out of disguise with a yelp, reverting to its original form and bolting across the field. Its glowing eyes were wide with panic as it fled the buzzing intruder. Clearly, it hated bees with an irrational intensity. Duwoon took in the entire display silently. From its fragmented speech earlier to this erratic behavior, It was obvious. The creature's intelligence was underdeveloped, likely the result of artificial acceleration. Injecting consciousness into an immature body often left chimeras emotionally unstable, unable to process stimuli properly. He'd seen similar cases before. This one was no threat, just a child in a machine's body. From behind a patch of tall grass and flowers, the chimera peeked out again, still shy, still watching. Its earlier attempts to intimidate him had failed, but its fascination hadn't faded. Meanwhile, Do-woon had finally managed to clean one shirt properly. He held it up, inspecting it with a quiet sense of accomplishment. It wasn't perfect, but it would do. He wrung out the excess water, smoothed the fabric and hung it on a sun-drenched tree branch to dry before heading off to check on the mandraoras. From the shadows, the chimera's glowing eyes remained locked on that shirt. Something about the way Do-woon wore clothes, the dignity in it perhaps, seemed to leave an impression, as if it too wanted to look human. Without hesitation or shame, the creature bounded forward and tugged the shirt off the branch. It slipped it on with clumsy excitement, adjusting the sleeves like a child playing dress-up. But it didn't stop there. Its metallic limbs shifted. The plating softened. Fingers narrowed into small childlike hands, its torso slimmed, joints rearranged, the hard, reflective shell morphing into a humanoid structure. In just moments, the chimera had reshaped itself into a small girl. Where the creature once stood, now stood a childlike figure with innocent eyes and a proud expression, clearly pleased with her transformation. Back near the rocks, Do-woon was inspecting the mandrars. Something wasn't right. Despite removing the weeds earlier, the plants looked worse than before. Wilted, hunched beneath a rock, dry and pale. He crouched to examine them more closely, and that's when the ground beneath suddenly stirred. Dozens of thin, pale worms erupted from the soil, squirming aggressively. Pest infestation. He realized the problem instantly. He had failed to till the soil properly. The surface might have been cleared, but the deeper layers had remained vulnerable. Without delay, he dealt with the pests and assessed the damage. The mandraoras were too fragile for rough environments. If he wanted them to grow strong and healthy, a better home was needed. A proper garden, with fertile soil, pest control, and protection. He stood up, brushing dirt off his knees, and made a quiet resolution. It was time to build a real vegetable garden. As he worked, the girl approached him cautiously from behind a tree and greeted him. He greeted her in return, wondering who she was. She asked if the nearby house belonged to him, and when he confirmed, she followed with another question, whether he was a native. Instead of answering directly, he turned the question around and asked what tribe she was from. The girl hesitated, caught off guard, but quickly claimed to come from a distant tribe beyond the waterfall. He teased her, inventing the name Coconut Tribe, and she nodded in agreement. But her outfit gave her away. It looked exactly like his. When he pointed that out, she paused, then quietly admitted she had been kicked out. She asked if she could stay here instead. She said the place seemed safe from bugs and having a house nearby made her feel secure. It wasn't hard to see she just wanted somewhere peaceful. Do-woon agreed to let her stay, but only if she helped out. She eagerly accepted. Her first job was to till the garden for the mandraoras. She took the tool from him confidently, claiming she was strong enough to do it. Without warning, she released an explosive burst of power, clearing the field with ease. Do-woon observed in silence. She wasn't trying to hide what she was. Maybe she didn't even understand how normal children were supposed to act. Once the task was done, he asked her name. She paused, surprised by the question, then admitted she didn't have one. Inspired by the flowers she'd seen earlier, she gave herself a name, Kim Nari. He misunderstood, thinking she had named herself after the four Psyche blossoms, but she quickly corrected him. They finished the garden together, surrounding it with sturdy stones. The mandraoras celebrated, swaying joyfully in the tilled soil, but Nari stood alone, watching them. Her expression darkened, and her eyes lowered. In the lab there had been no friends, no one to play with, no freedom. Her sadness deepened, a single tear forming in her eye. Then a sharp shriek pierced the forest, breaking the stillness. She ducked instinctively, startled. She'd told Do-woon she had seen a chick-like creature being attacked on her way here. The memory distressed her. She had seen it wounded and overwhelmed by multiple monsters. She held her head, trying to forget. Do-woon didn't pressure her. He simply asked whether she wanted to help. Giving her the choice made it easier. Encouraged, she launched into the sky and flew toward the source. She found the scene as she remembered. Several large insect-like monsters were ganging up on a small white creature. It cried out in pain with each attack. Nari stepped in between them and the victim, her voice trembling with rage. Her decision had already been made. A memory surfaced. Back in the lab, she had always been chosen to fight. The other chimeras hated her for following orders, blaming her when they were chosen for dangerous experiments. They had turned on her, attacked her. But that time was behind her. Now she stood her ground. As the monsters lunged again, she unleashed her full strength, sending a wave of force through the area. The insectoids were thrown back instantly. Her voice cracked as she declared that many hurting one was wrong. Her anger and pain surged as she ended the conflict in one devastating blow. Back at camp, Do-woon fed the mandraras calmly, asking if the mandra tasted good. But the quiet didn't last. Nari came running. She was crying, clearly panicked. In her arms was the small white creature, still unconscious. She asked him what to do, overwhelmed by worry. He urged her to calm down, but as he looked closer, he recognized it. The strange, flaming aura around the monster wasn't ordinary at all. A sudden thought crossed Do-woon's mind. The creature reminded him of that walrus-like monster from earlier, the one whose leather he had used to craft clothes. The resemblance stirred something deeper, nudging at his memory. Had he seen this type of chimera somewhere before? The question lingered in his mind, like an echo, uncertain but persistent. Nari noticed the small creature barely breathing and asked if it was dying. Do-woon stepped closer, placing his fingers gently on its body. He channeled mana into the creature, letting his energy flow through its wounds. As he did, he felt something familiar. Its magical essence carried a distinct history, a unique imprint like magical DNA. That signature confirmed his suspicion. This was the same immortal-type creature he had encountered before, but it was much smaller now. While healing it, he realized this was the very creature he had once found dead and spared. Its drastic size change puzzled him. It must regenerate differently than he did. He concluded it was only malnourished, all too small to hunt properly. But with the mana he provided, it would recover on its own. Nari, haunted by memories of her time in the lab, recalled the chimera experiments and how they all suffered. A sad image flashed in her mind. One of a fluffy creature collapsed on a cold floor. She insisted that, if left alone, this creature would die too. Lifting it in her arms, she asked if she could raise it herself. She promised to feed and train it properly. Do-woon warned her it might grow large. She quickly promised to feed it just enough. Her determination softened him, and he agreed. Overjoyed, Nari beamed. Just then, the little monster stirred, blinking in confusion. Its eyes locked onto Do-woon, and recognition lit up its gaze. A cooing sound escaped it, a dove-like noise, almost like it remembered who had once taken its skin when it was huge. Nari squeezed it in an affectionate hug, excited by the creature's soft noises. The little thing flailed in her grasp, loudly demanding release, which made her giggle. But Do-woon Frosi could understand everything it was saying. Nari proudly declared the treatment finished and announced she had chosen a name. Since it cooed like a pigeon, she called it Coo. Do-woon didn't mind the name, but the creature wasn't happy. It tried to protest, saying it already had a name, but Nari didn't understand and casually dumped a bucket of water on it. Panic hit her when the creature puffed up like a blowfish. She ran to Do-woon, concerned. With so many things piling up, he decided to focus on organizing. He picked up his blade and began shaping logs for a storage cabinet. As he cut, something felt off. The wood was too soft, unlike what he had used for the table. Coo, the little creature, explained the difference. He was using soft wood now, and the colors weren't the same. It surprised Do-woon. He hadn't known wood strength varied by color. Coo was about to explain more, but stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide. Do-woon stood still, thinking about the red wood Coo had just mentioned. His curiosity was piqued. Realizing the man had understood what it said, Coo switched tactics. It tried telepathy, linking with his mind to confirm its suspicion, but the connection failed. The creature's telepathy was blocked, something it thought impossible. Nervous now, Coo asked if he could truly hear its thoughts. Do-woon clarified it wasn't hearing exactly, it was more like the words just appeared in his mind. Turning it around, he asked how Coo could understand humans. That was even weirder. From that, Do-woon concluded Coo must be one of those rare, intelligent monsters, born through improbable odds. He then asked if they'd met before. The mana signature was familiar. Coo admitted they had. It said it had desperately wanted to see him again. It remembered how he'd saved its life, removed the poison, and protected its core. Grateful, Coo now wanted to return the favor. When Do-woon asked if it could help find redwood, Coo nodded enthusiastically. It puffed out its tiny chest, confident it could guide him to the forest where the red trees grew. But just as they were preparing to leave, a sudden explosion erupted. Fire engulfed Nari and she screamed in terror. Her mind spiraled back to the torment, in the lab pain, fire, and fear. The blast knocked her to the ground, leaving her dazed and panicked. In her mind, the lab had come to capture her again. Her trauma overwhelmed her. A hunter stepped out from the flames, tracking a mechanical, shape-shifting creature. He identified the target and moved toward Nari. Though he hesitated, knowing she was just a kid, his own survival depended on capturing her. He gathered fire in his hands, hoping she would understand. Then, with one swift move, he hurled the fireball straight at her. Terrified, Nari froze, thinking this was the end. But Dawoon stepped in, frustrated that even before breakfast his peace had been shattered. Ku told him to forget the red freeze for now, they'd go later. The priority was saving the child. Dawoon's eyes lit up with power. He saw Nari cowering. Her mental state was fragile, and the flames brought back too much. First he had to extinguish the fire. Ku agreed, calling the attacker a scumbag for targeting a child. The hunter grew more furious, but Dawoon simply told him to walk away while he still could. A tense silence filled the space. Then the attacker snapped and launched a violent torrent of flames at Dawoon, demanding he stay out of it. Dawoon remained calm. Raising his hand, he summoned a blue light at his fingertip. A precise beam of energy burst forward, slicing clean through the fire. It didn't stop there, slamming into a distant mountain and triggering a massive explosion. The hunter froze, stunned, pale with fear. He realized just how powerful the man in front of him was. Dawoon casually turned to Nari, asking if she was okay. The threat was over. She wiped her tears. Her new uncle had erased the flames. He gave her advice. The next time fear showed up, she should just knock it out. Then, with no effort, he grabbed the unconscious hunter by the hair, dragging him across the ground. As he lifted the man, he added that if the fear came back, she should knock it out again. But then something unexpected happened. As Dawoon lifted the man, his long black hair slipped right off, revealing a smooth, bald head underneath. Dawoon blinked, staring at the wig in his hand. What the heck was this? Dawoon stared at the man in disbelief. The word wig escaped his lips as he wondered if the guy had been bald the entire time. His suspicion was confirmed when Ku, fuming with anger, called the man a little brat. Meanwhile, Nari couldn't hold back her laughter after seeing the man's shiny bald head. She giggled uncontrollably, pointing out that he really was bald. The sight amused her so much that she no longer felt afraid. At that moment, Dawoon was hit with a memory one of the recent fights, where Ku had claimed that guy shouldn't have been a match for her. That statement had been followed by a demonstration. Ku had activated a technique called mental resonance, which allowed one to peer into another's memories and even share them with others. The scene then shifted to a memory of a scientist, with a twisted grin, standing before a strange creature. The scientist mocked the being for trying to dodge, remarking that it had finally developed a sense of self. He coaxed it forward, promising there was nothing to fear, just another durability test. Back in the present, Dawoon gently patted Nari's head and praised her. He knew trauma didn't vanish easily, but perhaps this moment marked her first step toward recovery. He then turned his attention back to the bald man and wondered aloud what they should do with him. Ku had already taken matters into her own hands and was now aggressively pounding on the man's bald head. Nari, brimming with energy, exclaimed that she had a brilliant idea. According to her mischievous plan, they tied the bald man up and suspended him over a waterfall using ropes. Watching this, Nari burst into laughter, shouting that if he got wet, the fire would go out. To her, the bald uncle was no longer scary. The man, drenched and frustrated, muttered to himself that this wasn't what he had come to the demon world for. Nari yelled from below, calling him a bad, bald uncle. Dawoon, though amused, gently reminded her not to judge people by their looks. In his thoughts, he considered that maybe Nari would recover faster than he had expected. As he began to collect water, Ku questioned his actions. He replied that he was getting water to make ramen. That immediately lit up Nari's face. She shouted with excitement that the bald uncle's fish ramen was the best. Surprised, Dawoon asked if the coconut tribe also ate fish ramen. Nari, clearly trying to keep up the act, enthusiastically claimed they loved it. From a distance, the bald man watched them and realized that Dawoon was at least an A-class hunter. Nari volunteered to catch the fish and leapt into the water. Observing her, Dawoon began to suspect that the man might be hiding his true strength, perhaps a reclusive hunter operating off the grid. As he fetched more water, he noted to himself that cooking ramen while hanging someone upside down felt messed up, even by demon world standards. Soon after, Nari resurfaced with 3 fish, 2 in her hands and 1 biting her head, which she seemed completely unfazed by. She proudly announced her catch. Dawoon asked for just 1 fish and told her to release the others. Nari quickly agreed and told him to hurry and toss it in. Watching the bizarre scene unfold, the bald man looked horrified. He muttered in disbelief, calling them things LAs and complaining that the monster was going to ruin the broth's flavor. He questioned why so much water was being used and doubted if they even knew how ramen worked. Meanwhile, Nari danced around excitedly, shouting that it was ramen time. Eventually, the man called out from above, asking to be let down, offering to cook it himself. After being freed, he took the task seriously. As he began preparing the ramen, his thoughts turned solemn. For some, it was just a bowl of ramen, but in that moment, for him, it was life or death. Do-woon, Nari, and Ku sat together in a tight semicircle, their eyes locked with unwavering intensity on the bald man who stood nervously before the bubbling pot. A suffocating silence loomed in the air, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the soft hiss of boiling water. The pressure in the atmosphere was unbearable. Each glare they gave off felt like a silent threat, an unspoken promise that if the ramen he was preparing fell short of perfection, he wouldn't survive the day. Under this brutal scrutiny, sweat poured down the man's face, glistening in the firelight as he focused with all his might. In his mind, a mantra played over and over. Ramen must be made with sincerity. There was no room for flair or experimentation. He needed to stick to what he knew. Reliable, simple fundamentals. Trusting his instincts, he gauged the water level for 3 servings, poured in the noodles and the concentrated soup base, and kept his breathing calm. He had no stopwatch. Instead, he synchronized the cooking with his heart rate, 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which equaled exactly 270 beats at 60 beats per minute. He began counting silently in his head. As the count neared 200, he moved swiftly to the final phase. In one motion, he executed the air shower technique, lifting the cooked noodles into the air and letting them fall gently back into the pot. The moment exposed them to cool air, enhancing the springiness of their texture, giving them that signature chewiness. The noodles bounced with a soft elastic sound, reminding him of home. He briefly wished he had some kimchi. It would have been the perfect finishing touch, but this was the demon world, and ingredients were scarce. Still, he had given everything he had. There would be no regrets. When the ramen was finally finished, it looked nothing short of spectacular. The broth shimmered, thick and rich, with perfectly coiled noodles glistening in the steam. He turned and offered the bowl to his intense audience. Nari leaned in first, observing that it looked quite different from the ramen Do-woon usually made. Do-woon nodded in agreement. But then, the moment of truth arrived. They took their first bites, and silence fell again, only this time it was a silence of awe. It was the unmistakable taste of sincerity. Their eyes widened as the flavor sank in. Nari beamed, expressing her amazement, while even Ku, usually so cold and restrained, was visibly moved, wondering if this was the kind of food humans ate on a regular basis. Do-woon gave a rare smile. He admitted it was impressive. With no further delay, they focused on the meal. Within minutes, they had cleared every drop from their bowls. As the bald man finally spoke, timidly asking if they liked it, Do-woon looked up with a firm gaze and told him to name his price. The man blinked, confused, unsure if he'd heard right. Do-woon repeated himself. The food was too good to eat for free. If there was anything the man wanted in return, he would try to grant it. The moment overwhelmed the man. His knees hit the ground as he made a sudden plea. He revealed his identity, Hunter Nam Gi-suk, and begged Do-woon to take him in as a disciple. He wanted to become stronger, to reach a level like Do-woon's. Do-woon raised an eyebrow, questioning the name and what Gi-suk meant by teach. Ju-sok explained, pouring out everything at once. To him, Do-woon was the strongest hunter he had ever seen. Judging by the house nearby, he assumed Do-woon was stationed here for a long-term subjugation mission. He confessed he could cook more than just ramen, and though he falsely claimed to have certifications, there was one honest truth. His father ran a fried chicken shop, and he had become quite good at making fried chicken himself. Desperation crept into his voice as he spoke of the constant hassle of going through the gate for supplies, food, clothes, anything. He offered to become Do-woon's personal runner, to fetch whatever was needed from the human world. He even promised to pay in full for every lesson. His only goal was to rise in rank, to become an A-class hunter someday. Do-woon grew more serious. He had only one question. Why had Gi-suk attacked Kim Nari? Was it because of the bounty? The question caught Gi-seok off guard. The name sounded familiar, but it took him a moment to remember the tale they were playing along with, the Coconut Tribe's story. Quickly, he nodded and agreed to stick with the backstory. Meanwhile, Nari continued staring into her now empty bowl, visibly disappointed. The meal had vanished too quickly. Gi-seok's voice wavered as he gave a strained explanation. His reasons were personal. He didn't care about bounties or rewards. All he truly wanted was to pass the hunter exam. That was everything to him. Do-woon stood up and told Gi-seok to rise as well. When asked why, he replied that a spar was only fair after such a meal. Their last encounter had ended too quickly. Gi-suk gave a deep, respectful bow, thanking him. But then Nari interrupted. She wanted to be the one to spar. When Do-woon asked if she was sure, she repeated what he had taught her. When you're afraid, knock it out. She wanted to confront her fear herself and put the fire out with her own hands. Gi-suk smirked slightly, trying to act playful. He reminded her that while Do-woon might be strong, he wasn't weak either. But before he could say more, Do-woon turned to him, confirmed his name, and pointed toward a nearby black structure. He asked if Ji-seok could break it. Ji-seok's expression changed. The structure was made of obsidianite, an extremely rare and dense mineral, said to be several times harder than diamond. He admitted honestly that it would take someone of A-class strength to even crack it. Do-woon challenged him again. So, he couldn't do it? Ji-seok hesitated, calling it insane. He began to explain that it wasn't just about raw strength. But before he could finish, a sudden blast rang out from behind. A booming voice followed. It was Nari. She called out with force and fire in her tone, addressing him directly. "Baldy uncle, come out." It was time to spar. The story shifted to Nam Gi-seok, known as a natural awakener. Once considered a prodigy, he awakened at the rare age of 8, far earlier than the usual late-teen awakenings. His gift was undeniable. With effort piled on top of his talent, his rise was rapid. By the time he was 20, he had already reached B+ rank, a meteoric climb that brought him both fame and ambition. For a while, his future seemed limitless. But at the age when most people first awakened, Ji-seok's flaw revealed itself. His hair began thinning in his early 20s, and before long his crown receded into a sharp M shape. In desperation, he chased every treatment, visiting clinics, trying transplants, and clinging to hope. Doctors eventually told him the truth. It would all fall out again. He should give up. The words broke him. Once celebrated for his looks and talent, he quickly lost his shine. His progress as a hunter stalled, and he was eventually disqualified. Then one day, while watching an interview with Dr. Hyung Young-do of the Hanbit Institute, Ji-seok's attention sharpened. The doctor spoke of a rare material called liquid metal, found only in the demon world. He explained how an accidental spill had once given rise to a mechanical creature, and, strangely, caused the regrowth of his own hair, despite his being nearly 90. Reporters asked if this could be a cure for baldness. Dr. Han dismissed the thought, saying his interest lay in creating mechanical beings with the remaining supply. Ji-seok, however, bristled with frustration. A true cure, he believed, would serve humanity far more. Days later, his phone lit up with the headline, "Masterpiece Mechanical Creature Lost in the Demon World." Ji-seok immediately thought of the liquid metal. With no laws binding him there, he could seize it for himself and restore what he had lost. Back in the present, Ji-seok sparred with Nari. To his surprise, the young girl was far stronger than he expected. Do-woon, watching with growing disappointment, pointed out that Ji-seok had yet to land a single clean strike. If things didn't change, his shuttle duty would be revoked. Gi-seok, desperate, promised he would improve. Nearby, Do-woon put the finishing touches on a redwood cabinet, thanking Xia-yu for the advice that made it sturdy. She reassured him it would last a long time. Watching Gi-seok's unyielding energy despite constant defeat, Do-woon wondered if shedding his wig had something to do with it. Gi-seok then lit his flames and challenged Nari again. Xia-yu admitted his flames carried skill but questioned their worth if he couldn't even best a child. Do-woon reminded her Nari was far from ordinary. With renewed determination, Gi-seok charged, but when Nari slipped into liquid form his focus faltered. She caught him off guard and launched a kick that sent him flying. Standing tall, she declared she no longer feared fire thanks to him. Breathless, Gi-seok wondered if this was the ceiling for a lifelong B rank. Even so, he refused to quit. He rose once more, ready to fight again, when a sudden nosebleed stopped him. Do-woon asked how long he had been inside the demon world. 9 days, Gi-seok replied. That was too long. Do-woon warned stay much longer and it could kill him. Reluctantly, Ji-seok agreed to stop, though he longed to continue. Then Do-woon surprised him. He claimed Ji-seok had the potential for A rank. After 6 failed tests across 6 years, when most gave up after 3, Ji-seok had nearly abandoned hope. Do-woon explained his mana hole was still incomplete and urged him not to quit. The words struck deep, leaving Ji-seok emotional. Do-woon reminded him to cleanse himself of demonic energy on his return. Ji-seok vowed to give everything he had. Watching him go, Do-woon resolved privately to mold him into an A-rank laborer. Before stepping through the dungeon gate, Ji-seok turned back and asked if there was anything else he could do. With ramen gone, Ji-seok offered to bring back more supplies. Nari wished him safety, and he promised to train hard for their next match. Before leaving, he asked about his missing wig, but Do-woon denied knowing anything. Still puzzled, Jisok departed. Once he was gone, Siyu voiced her concern to Do-woon. If Jisok ever betrayed them or brought other hunters, he could become a threat. Do-woon asked why she thought so, and she explained it was always a possibility. When he pressed her to read Jisok's intentions, she confirmed his sincerity both in his desire to grow stronger and in the truth about his baldness. Do-woon considered that sincerity valuable, enough to be worth investing in. Curious, Nari asked if he could actually understand Siwi. He admitted he could, even pointing out that the cabinet he built had been made with her guidance. The neat home impressed him, though Nari complained it felt too dark. Ti-woon offered to make a window, and when he did, the light brightened the room, leaving her delighted. He then explained that they would also need light at night, suggesting glowstones that glowed in the dark. Siu asked how he knew where to find them. Do-woon replied that they were located in volcanic zones. Her expression grew serious as she warned that such places were among the most dangerous regions for hunters, and, more personally, her homeland. Ku noticed her unease, and found it strange she looked gloomy about going back. Sensing the shift in tone, Nari hugged Ku. Do-woon explained that Ku was worried about the journey, and decided he would go alone while Nari and Ku stayed behind, but Nari refused. Now that her fear of fire was gone, she wanted to go too. Surprised at how quickly she had recovered, Do-woon turned to Ku. Ku agreed to join as well, saying he had unfinished matters to resolve there. Do-woon accepted, and resolved to craft special gear for the volcanic zone before they departed. Elsewhere, in Mandragora Valley, a Mandragora stumbled upon Jisuk's missing wig and kicked it across the ground. Not long after, the volcanic zone came into view. Its oppressive heat and hostile air set the stage for the trials awaiting them. The volcanic region stood among the top 3 most avoided places in the demon world. Violent ash storms ripped through the air, tearing its skin, while concentrated toxic gases mixed with demonic energy made breathing deadly. Few in the human world knew anything about this place. Amid this dangerous terrain, Do-woon, Nari and Ku pressed forward. Nari, seemingly unbothered by the hostile environment, played with the flames around her. Ku, frustrated, noted how little humans knew about this land and wondered why she was acting so carefree. Do-woon remarked on her playing, and Ku explained that Nari's nature as a mechanical creature made it normal for her to be drawn to such things. The conversation shifted when Ku questioned how Do-woon could endure this environment, and asked what he truly was. Do-woon revealed himself as a chimera hunter, explaining that he once bore the monstrous form common to his kind, but had regained a human appearance after regenerating. He asked if Ku was comfortable staying with them, despite being a monster herself, to which Ku admitted it wasn't so bad. Nearby, Nari almost burned her clothes while playing. Ku then remarked how pleasant it was to talk with someone, and how Do-woon and Nari didn't seem like bad people. Do-woon found relief in hearing that. Nari, noticing their conversation, called out excitedly, wanting to speak with Ku as well, though she had given him the name Ku while calling him Gu before. Do-woon reminded Nari that she had once been curious about him. She declared that he was a native of the demon world, as she was too, laughing at her own statement. Ku corrected her, claiming to be the actual native, and mentioned that the luminous stones they sought would be near where lava erupted. As evening approached, Do-woon pointed out that the crater was close. Nari spotted the summit and rushed to see it. There, Do-woon found the luminous stone, but his attention was caught by a weeping fire toad. Nari pointed out another one ahead, and Ku explained that the female had died while moving. She described how female fire toads carried their eggs on their backs during breeding season, and without the mother, the eggs would perish in the extreme crater heat. Nari, saddened, noted how lonely the surviving toad looked. Ignoring Ku's warning about the creature's sensitivity, Do-woon leapt down toward it. The male fire toad attacked, spewing flames, but Do-woon calmly placed a finger against its forehead. A small needle-like projection delivered a paralysis toxin from the Nekacobra enough to incapacitate it briefly without lasting harm, as fire toads were immune to the poison. When Nari asked if he was fine, Do-woon assured her he was safe, revealing that his own body carried fire toad cells. They could do nothing for the dead, but the living would survive. Once the toad regained consciousness, it was bound securely to prevent injury until it fully recovered. The creature then embraced its deceased mate in a silent farewell before leaping away. As it departed, it glanced toward Nari, who believed it was offering thanks. Do-woon guessed it had seen the body of its mate, but agreed with her, urging the group to mine the luminous stones and head home. Nari responded with excitement, and together they collected the stones. She admired them greatly, though Do-woon warned her of their weight and the danger if dropped. He noticed Ku's fatigue, and Ku admitted that he once played with such stones effortlessly before his size diminished. Do-woon suggested he rest and focus on delivering the gifts he had brought, knowing they were meant for his kind. Embarrassed, Ku denied having friends, claiming the gifts were simply to be left behind. Dowoon silently recognized his shyness. As they worked, Ku spoke hesitantly of his past. Gaining intelligence had brought both good and bad. He recalled the emptiness of living among his kind without true connection, where language and awareness only deepened his solitude. Eventually he had left his group entirely, believing they might not even notice his absence. Finishing his story, Ku struggled to lift a luminous stone due to its heaviness. At that moment, Nari heard a sound and discovered a cracked monster egg. She showed it to Dowoon, who speculated that Ku's dropped stone might have caused the damage. He explained that the young inside needed to break free on its own to grow strong. Nari insisted on taking it along to save it from the volcanic heat, while Ku strongly opposed, fearing what might hatch. Dowoon knew of a suitable place for a nest nearby, and admitted curiosity about the egg. Deciding there was no choice, he agreed to take it. Nari eagerly volunteered to carry it despite Ku's protests. Reassured by Dowoon's presence, Ku reluctantly accepted, and the group continued mining before heading home. Upon returning, they found Jiseok had arrived ahead of them. He quickly offered to carry their heavy load, though Dowoon found something strange about him. Jiseok struggled to lift it and asked what they had been carrying. Dowoon then noticed him keeping his head down, as though hiding tears, and told him to look up. Jiseok had also brought food for Ku, who ate heartily. Dowoon curiously asked Jiseok who had hurt him, surprised that someone like him would end up beaten. Jiseok admitted that Nari often beat him up around here, something he almost seemed proud of. Dowoon thought it was strange to be proud of such a thing, but Jiseok quickly changed the subject, saying he would serve the food right away, and rushed off to prepare it. Meanwhile, Dowoon was carefully cutting a glowstone. Nari noticed his work and asked what he was doing. Dowoon explained that he was cutting the glowstone to make a lamp, planning to hang it from the ceiling so that it would look beautiful. Hearing this, Nari's face lit up with a bright smile. She told him he was really smart, that he knew so much, and explained things so well. She added that he also seemed kind-hearted, just like her father. Wanting to tease her, Dowoon asked about her father in the coconut tribe. He already knew that Nari was a robot and had lied about living in such a tribe. Startled, Nari nervously confirmed that her father was indeed doing well. As the day came to an end, the sunset cast a warm glow across the land. Ku lay on the ground, quietly enjoying the warmth. It was not as hot as the volcanic zone, but enough to make his body feel like it was melting. Suddenly, 3 small mandragoras leapt onto him. Annoyed, Ku shouted at them in frustration. Nari tried to calm them, asking why they were fighting. Dowoon noted that Ku was angry because the little creatures had invaded his territory. At that moment, Kusok returned with the food, declaring that the wait was over. He served a dish that was sweet, sour, and addictive, something that was a big hit with children. It was fried tofu pockets, carefully prepared with his heartfelt effort. The dish had a taste score of 80, with 22 carbs, 19 protein, 18 sodium, and 19 fat. Jiseok thought to himself how tofu pockets were easy to make, yet always looked impressive. Nari admired him, calling him amazing, while Ku commented that the food looked decent enough. Jiseok laughed and told them to dig in. Before eating, Dowoon reminded Jiseok that he still had not explained what happened to his face. Jiseok hesitated before admitting that he had gone to the Hunter Association to apply for the promotion exam but had run into some A-class hunters. Dowoon pieced it together, saying they must have mocked him for failing 7 times, which led to a fight and resulted in his injuries. Jiseok agreed, explaining that they told him to stop hanging around and muddying the waters. While the two were discussing this matter, Nari and Ku kept asking for more tofu, enjoying its sweet and soft flavor. Gyeosuk then confessed to Dowoon that the hunters had insulted him further, mocking him by asking if his pride had fallen out along with his hair. He admitted that he could not take it anymore. Dowoon pointed out that Gyeosuk had only shaved his head and was not completely bald. But Gyeosuk grew defensive, explaining that his hair loss was a real medical condition. He said that if he were truly bald, his scalp would be smooth like a peeled egg, but his follicles were still alive. He insisted that it hurt when people joked about it so casually. The exact cause was still a mystery, but he believed it was not entirely hopeless. He claimed his hairline at the front was still fighting, and with the right knowledge there might be a solution. Dowoon acknowledged Jiseok's earlier explanation and asked about the timing of the promotion exam. Jiseok revealed that it would be held in 60 days, the month after next. Hearing this, Dowoon decided that it was time for special training. Jiseok immediately became eager, declaring that he would do anything Dowoon asked. The first order came quickly. From that day forward, Jiseok was told to take over dish duty from Kim Nari. Shocked, he hesitated, wondering if washing dishes was truly part of his training. At the table, Nari still had water dripping from her mouth as she craved more tofu, though all of it had already been eaten. Even Ku wanted more, his appetite for tofu still unsatisfied. Do-woon gave another command, instructing Jisuk to wash all the leftover glowstones that were filthy with volcanic ash. Jisuk was stunned, asking if he really had to clean them all since he had been told this was supposed to be special training. But Do-woon reminded him coldly that if he did not want to follow through, he could simply live the rest of his life as a B class. He then announced to Nari that they would go fishing to aid digestion. Excited, Nari said fishing sounded like fun. Jisuk wanted to protest further, but the words remained unspoken. Instead, he quietly gathered the plates from the table, convincing himself that Do-woon must have a reason for these tasks. He clenched his teeth with determination. Everyone saw him as some kind of natural-born genius, but in truth, Nam Jisuk was a man who had clawed his way up to B class through sheer effort. He believed he was nothing without diligence and perseverance. Once he decided to believe in something, he held on to that trust until the very end. He was a man who could fail 6 times but still rise up and try a 7th. With renewed resolve, he declared inwardly that he was following his Hyungnim all the way. He even thought of Do-woon as someone who had everything: strength, kindness, and charm. To him, Do-woon was not only capable and cool, but also kind, handsome, and even a little sexy. Soon after, they went fishing together. Yet Nari noticed that no fish were approaching her line. All the fish seemed drawn toward Jisuk instead. Unfortunately, they were not harmless ones. Dangerous aquatic monsters swarmed him, biting ferociously, while Jisuk cried out in pain. He admitted that aquatic Timon monsters were his worst matchup, and screamed as the stinging pain grew unbearable. Watching this, Do-woon realized just how much supervision Jisuk required. He then asked Jisuk why he was not using his mana to defend himself, reminding him that his mana could create a shield. Jisuk admitted that he had tried during training, but his control was still poor. Considering this, Do-woon thought of a way to test him. He instructed Jisuk to hold one of the glowstones. Confused, Jisuk asked why so suddenly, but as soon as he grasped it, he felt a surge of strange energy flow into him. Alarmed, he dropped the stone, realizing it was filled with demonic energy. His arm went weak, unable to muster any strength. He recognized the energy immediately, and trembled, unable to control it. Do-woon explained that some glowstones contained condensed demonic energy. He told him that this power came directly from the demon realm, raw and unrefined. The only way to handle it was to use refined mana to push it out before one could properly access their own power. Do-woon reassured him that he already had plenty of mana stored inside his body, but admitted that his control over it was still unskilled. A spark of energy lit within Jisuk. Do-woon told him that a new path should have opened inside him. He instructed him to follow that path, channel his mana through it, and then try lifting the glowstone once more. With great effort, Jisuk focused. He drew upon his mana and, straining with full force, lifted the glowstone successfully. His joy overflowed, realizing what this meant. He declared with pride that even washing dishes and cleaning glowstones had all been part of Do-woon's greater plan for his mana training. Do-woon confirmed this, telling him to keep channeling his mana and take care of the dishes from now on as part of his continued training. Jisuk accepted without hesitation, proudly proclaiming that he was a man who could polish anything to a shine. He thought of himself as quite the domestic man now, repeating to himself that he could do it. That night, after the long day, Do-woon finally completed his glowstone lamp. He hung it in the house, filling the room with its soft glow. Soon after, everyone drifted into sleep. Ku lay curled up with the egg clutched tightly in his arms, yet found himself unable to fall asleep. He groaned, regretting that afternoon nap that left him restless. Then, suddenly, his eyes caught movement. Nari was awake and quietly leaving the house. Suspicious, Ku watched her slip away and wondered to himself where she could be going so late at night. Nari had gone to the pond to wash her clothes. Stepping into the water, she scrubbed them clean, murmuring to herself that this was the one the mister had given her. She reassured herself that it would be fine once washed. From behind, Do-woon and Ku secretly watched. Do-woon wondered why she was doing laundry in the middle of the night. Ku scolded him in a whisper, reminding him that she was a girl and had no spare clothes to change into. Do-woon admitted to himself that it didn't matter much what he wore, but seeing her like this left him uneasy. When Nari finally removed the stain, she cheered with joy. Do-woon thought to himself that she was just a child, and he wondered if he had been too neglectful of her. She happily declared that the laundry was done and perfect. At that moment, she noticed Do-woon and Ku approaching. Do-woon, acting casually, commented on how nice the night air felt. Surprised, Nari asked why he was there. Do-woon explained that he was simply taking a walk with Ku, and asked if she was out for a walk too. Nervously, Nari agreed. Dawoon then asked her to stay still for a moment. With a small rope, he tied 2 flowers around her waist, saying it looked cute. Nari, delighted, agreed that it looked pretty, noting that it resembled his own. Dawoon explained that it was a forsythia flower, her favorite. Suddenly, Nari was startled by a sound from the bushes. She screamed in fright, asking what it was. Dawoon calmly told her it was just a grasshopper, a harmless B-class monster, and reassured her not to be afraid. Nari admitted it startled her. Like a father holding his daughter's hand, Dawoon gently took her hand as they walked back toward home. On the way, he asked if she needed anything, like clothes or shoes. Nari reminded him that he had already given her some and said she really liked them. Dawoon accepted her answer but remained thoughtful. The scene shifted. Near the slums of District 13, Dawoon emerged from a dungeon gate wearing Gi Seok's clothes. The outfit looked strange on him since his body was larger, and he walked barefoot. People stared at him, but he paid no mind. His thoughts returned to Nari. She had said she was fine, but he knew making her wear only one ill-fitting outfit wasn't right. Ku had been nagging him about it too. He realized it would have been better to bring her here, to choose clothes herself, but the human world might still overwhelm her because of her trauma. She also still carried a tracking device. He found it amusing that he had used a precious gatestone just to come back to the slums for a child's clothes. He searched for a clothing store, wondering if too much time had passed and if it was gone. Then, a red-hand boy tugged at his shirt from behind, asking if he was looking for a clothing store. The boy demanded a 10,000 won service fee to guide him, claiming to know a cheap and good place. Seeing Dawoon's hesitation, Dawoon promised to pay once he had change, admitting he didn't have small bills. The boy assumed the hunter must have been ripped off in the demon realm, clearly a rookie without even 10,000 won to spare. He asked if Dawoon at least had enough to buy clothes. He then offered to guide him anyway, making an exception because Dawoon looked too pitiful. Dawoon thanked him and followed. The boy introduced himself as Bongsu, and Dawoon shared his own name. Bongsu quickly decided to call him Hyung. As they walked, Dawoon noticed patrol cars and thought the slums felt safer now. Bongsu guessed that Dawoon hadn't been awakened for long, pointing out that he had come out of a gate with no equipment. He assumed Dawoon must have spent a fortune on gear, only to be robbed. He told him not to be discouraged, since that happened to everyone at the start. Dawoon, curious, remarked that Bongsu knew a lot for his age. Offended, Bongsu clarified that he wasn't a kid, just short from not eating enough, and revealed he was 17. He explained that although this was all part of the slums, District 13 was dangerous and should be avoided. The Space Gang had expanded their territory there, and even the police had abandoned it. District 12 was where they currently stood. Dawoon silently wondered if the orphanage he once lived in within District 13 still existed. At the clothing store, a woman sat inside, lamenting to herself that she must be crazy to run such a business in the slum. Young couples couldn't afford children, yet children's wear was her main product. She debated whether to switch to another business. Bongsu entered, cheerfully calling her Boss Ajuma. Furious, she shouted that he should call her Nuna instead, since she wasn't even married yet. Dawoon quietly noted that it was his first time in a clothing store to buy clothes for someone else. Bongsu told the woman, Park, that this hunter needed clothes. He also whispered that Dawoon was a hunter. Park immediately dragged Bongsu aside, scolding him for bringing broke hunters again. She complained about the unpaid taxes piling up. Bongsu resisted, muffled protests spilling out as she pinched his cheeks. He insisted he couldn't know if Dawoon had money. Park argued that Dawoon clearly looked broke. Bongsu defended him, blurting that at least he was handsome. Park reminded him that she had only ever helped people like him once or twice because they reminded her of her late brother, and she couldn't keep doing it or she'd end up homeless. Bongsu snapped back that she was the one who had helped him first, buying him meals. Their bickering escalated like a childish fight, Park yelling that she'd even give him money to clean himself up. While they argued, Dawoon quietly chose clothes. He approached, with money, telling her he wanted to buy and that this was all he had. When she checked, she froze, 10 million won. Shocked, both she and Bongsu realized he had said this is all. Their behavior changed instantly. Bongsu cleaned the store thoroughly, then served Dawoon food at a table, while treating him like a guest of honor. Park enthusiastically introduced her shop as Happy Coon World, proudly welcoming him to a place where he could meet a new you every day. From adult wear to children's wear, they had it all. She asked politely if he was shopping for himself. Dawoon began searching for clothes for a preschool-aged girl, and while at it, something for himself as well. He also thought of shoes. Park found it sweet and assured him he had come to the right place. as children's wear was their specialty. She introduced him to the new spring and summer collection, explaining that lace was essential, coordinated sets were best for active children, and pink was something that simply had to be chosen. She showed him a wide variety of clothes, and Dawoon bought them all. Park thought to herself that finally, someone had purchased so many clothes at once. She wished every day could be like this, and regretted not having more stock to sell. The total came to over 100 items, and she offered to have them delivered, but Dawoon declined, insisting on carrying them himself. Before leaving, Dawoon handed Bongsu 2 shirts, along with some money, and asked for one more favor. As they left the shop, he felt that buying new clothes brought a good feeling. Bongsu then led him to a place, introducing it as the clean and decent inn Dawoon had asked for. There was a police station nearby, making it safe, and the owner was kind. Dawoon confirmed and stepped inside, telling Bongsu to wait for him. Bongsu felt uneasy. No matter how much money someone had, giving a kid like him a 100,000 won fee, buying him clothes, and showing so much generosity didn't seem normal. He recalled hearing about men who lured street kids with money only to kidnap them. He debated whether he should run away, but also considered the chance that Dawoon could truly be a good person, just like Park. Dawoon returned and handed Bongsu a room key, telling him the place was clean and nice inside. It was room 303. He explained that since Bongsu looked like he had been living on the streets, he had already paid a year's rent up front. From now on, this would be his home. He had also paid for his meals, so Bongsu should eat properly. With that, Dawoon turned to leave. Bongsu hesitated, wondering if going inside would mean he was being kidnapped. He questioned why Dawoon, someone who had just met him that very day, would give him a finder's fee, clothes, and now even a room. Dawoon explained that it reminded him of how things used to be. He had lived like that himself a long time ago, though it was a very, very long time back. With a goodbye, he left. Through a dungeon gate, Dawoon returned home. Ji-sok, wrapped in a cloth since Dawoon had worn his clothes earlier, noticed him coming back. Nari, upset, asked where he had gone without saying anything. Dawoon revealed he had gone to buy her a present. Nari opened the gift and was overjoyed, finding more than 100 clothes inside. Ku was astonished at the sheer number. Ji-sok, disappointed, pointed out that there was nothing for him. Dawoon awkwardly confirmed it. Here Dawoon brought clothes for Nari and bought more than 100 clothes for himself, but he didn't buy anything for the one whose clothes he had worn when he went there. The MC is kind of selfish, but the MC is also good in his own way, never mind we love our MC. Little Nari adored her new clothes. Dawoon encouraged her to pick what she liked and try them on. Excited, she hurried to change. The scene then ended with the mysterious egg they had found earlier. The next episode promised new adventures, surprises, and mysteries. Viewers were reminded to stay tuned to the channel for what was to come, and not to forget to smash the thumbs up button.